What is going on, everyone? We are back. Dom, fresh off of a trip to Montana.
Yeehaw.
How was it?
It was really good. Good time. Good to be out there. First time in 5 years. I haven't been back since the day I moved out. So it was good. It was a good time.
Matt back from his tropical vacation to Grand Island. Always lovely this time of year.
I mean, listen, you guys actually had like 40-degree difference back here.
Yeah,
I
it was like
out
70.
there.
It was unbelievable.
People were out on the beach.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm in the mountains. Everybody having a good time here in Western
Always
New York.
sunny on Grand Island. Free agency started for the Bills last week. It was a very chaotic week. I think it kind of calmed down by the middle point when free agency actually opened up. We kind of knew at that point what they were doing. But as I reflect on what has happened, I am sitting here wondering, what the heck are the Bills going to do at cornerback? And I feel like that's a question a lot of people have.
It is the most glaring need, and it's bar none the biggest need this team has right now because Christian Benford is so solidified that I actually think if he wasn't at the level he is right now, there'd be panic alarms still being set off at this moment. I think there are still alarms about this position, but Brandon Bead said something when he spoke to the media last week, kind of after all these free agent signings was, hey, listen, cornerback isn't the only position I'm going to look to make better, but I certainly know for a fact it's one we need to address.
I would say two things. One, we got a month and a half till the draft, so we'll continue to look. Number two, Jay, probably what I said last year when we traded Steph in early April, we don't play until September, so give us time to work through it. Things change. People pay using that position. Somebody may have paid a corner that makes another one expendable at some point. So we will continue to monitor not only that position but other positions. Right now it's about building competition and depth across the roster before we get to the draft. And then, once you get there, and then when you get done with the draft, you kind of see how that fell. What did you land? Now what are your holes? And again, post-draft, some people may get heavy and say, you know what, I can release a guy now or June 1st, spread his cap out. So we'll continue to roster build. It never, in a perfect world, you would always love to stand up here and say, we can go play games right now. I'm not, professing that, but we'll continue to work at it. And again, I don't think that's the only spot we got to continue to get better at.
And for any big Bills fan who's just a big fan of Dane Jackson, right?
Yeah.
That's not your cornerback too. That's a big death piece. Listen, Dane Jackson, you know what you're going to get with him, but please don't go into this offseason thinking Dane Jackson's going to slide in as the second cornerback here, unless he proves it, right? But that's not the guy they're going to go get. I think at some point they're probably going to wait and see how the market kind of influxes here and then wait to see what their option is.
I just think at this point, you bring back Russell Douglas. That's what I would do.
I've been saying that.
I think you
along.
bring back Russ at this point. I think you bring back Russell Douglas just because you know what you're getting with him, and that should not impact the way you approach the draft in a month or so. I understand at this point, it really feels like one of their first few picks is going to be on a cornerback. It's going to be cornerback or defensive line, probably 1, 2. Or, regardless of the order, those are going to be the first two players or positions that they pick. I think you can bring back Russell Douglas and kind of insulate that player a little bit and also give yourself some injury insurance if something does happen. Because what if they bring in a player and it doesn't work out? Like we just saw happen with Kyer Elam.
Bingo.
That's the concern. And then you have to use Dane Jackson. I don't think you're using Jamarcus Ingram. I don't think you're using Cam Lewis. So, I think that's the most logical thing to do.
Right.
Unless Russell just wants way too much money.
Which at this point, I mean, he's still open on the market here. He's a free agent, so it's I don't know how much more value he has. What is going to be the best deal for him than already being familiar? We know his relationship with Christian. I wonder how much that factors into where Rasul is in his career. Is he one of those guys who, like Cooper Kupp, goes and gets a bag, right? Does he want more money right now, or does he want to actually compete for a legitimate shot at a Super Bowl and also to go play alongside a guy like Christian Benford, who he's developed this really cool relationship with? I've been saying Rasul since I think the last time we did this when we ran through our list of people too. But you brought up the thing where okay, cornerback, first or second pick, please not the first round pick. If the Bills stick at third, maybe it's just because we are
you have
less
a bad
than a week.
You have a bad taste in your mouth.
We are less than a week removed since they traded Elam to the Cowboys. That's example A, why I just don't think you go get a cornerback in that first round pick. Bean has not given me, and I'm sure a lot of people, any confidence in the fact that they're going to go find the right guy who could step in and be that opposite cornerback two of Benford.
Well, let me say this, though. My counterpoint here. Now, Trey was a Sean McDermott pick and then a Brandon Bean pick. So that was a late first-round corner. They did draft Dane Jackson, who I think was a good player and is a good player. I don't think he's a starter, but I think he's a very capable number 3. Even though they get the knock for Kyer, they should get the credit for drafting Christian Benford when they did 100%. In the 6th round. So I feel like the sample size with just Kyer, yeah, it was a whiff. But I think as a whole, they've actually done a fair... I mean, they drafted Taron Johnson. I know he's a nickel cornerback, but he is still a cornerback. I feel like they've had more success drafting corners. That wouldn't scare me away. I think it's so dependent, too, on the class. Like if they really like the class, who knows, maybe you get the 3rd or 4th best guy. Maybe that's more valuable than the 6th or 7th best pass rusher.
Yeah, I also too, I lean a little bit of defensive tackle or just even defensive line. This is also a little bit more recent because we're less than a week removed since we found out Hoyt and Ogunjobi are going to be done for the first 6 games of the year, right? So immediately I'm like, okay, you got to have some sort of a need. You're going to have to throw somebody in there that's going to have to kind of tread the water for the first 6 weeks before those guys come back.
Yeah.
So there's going to be we talked to so many guys and so many draft analysts when I was at the Combine, and the defensive tackle group, the defensive line class is just so loaded. So to me, it's like that is such an almost obvious way for Bean to go. So it's almost like, is it too obvious where he goes somewhere else? For me, I think it's a clear path. You go get a guy there, then you go test the waters in the later rounds because that's where Bean has hit home runs with cornerbacks.
Yeah, that's fair too. I'm interested to see because I think there's 3 things that they do, and this is like a very blanket statement. I think it's corner, I think it's a defensive lineman, whether that be a tackle or an edge rusher, or it's a wide receiver. I think those are the 3 positions that they have to address early, relatively speaking, in the draft. Now, you could realistically take one of each because you have your first-round pick and you have your 2 second-round picks. But I think right now, the most likely outcome is that they draft a corner. I think the most likely outcome right now is that they draft a corner and then they sign some other veteran later in the offseason that isn't Rasul Douglas, because I don't know if they want to commit money to that position when they know they're going to pay Christian Benford a ton, which is why I think corner is such an intriguing option, because you would get your other guy opposite him on a cost-controlled deal for the next 3 years minimum, which I think is really, really valuable to them.
Yeah, that's a fair point, too. I also think you can make the same argument just going up and getting a guy in the defensive line. Those first 3 position groups, I mean, I'm also somebody who is like, hey, if there's a good wide receiver on that board sitting at 30,
yes, go take him.
Get somebody. Go get a playmaker there, too, absolutely. I just think the needs are so much more glaring defensively still that those 2 position groups kind of stick out. But if you're not going to find your guy, let's just say like they're high on Kenneth Grant, right? Kenneth Grant off the board at like 22 or something like that, and the cornerback for them is not there. Go get that wide receiver. Go see if like a Matthew Golden is still sitting there for some
probably not after his 40.
Yeah, probably not, right? Yeah. But like he was mocked in that later 20 up there. Maybe they make a move up. I don't really know, but there's so many different ways they go, but I just feel like defensively, the needs are so much more obvious up front and then obviously in the secondary.
How do you think it plays out? Do you agree? Do you think that they just roll into this with the draft, or do you think they eventually bring back Rasul or sign one of those other veterans that's still available?
I think they'll either bring Rasul back or they'll go get some veteran that's going to be available as the kind of the months go on here. It's like being said, and part of that quote is like, we know there are going to be guys who are part of teams that sign other cornerbacks to big money. So it's going to devaluize them, and it's also going to give them opportunities for that market to expand in terms of just where their availability would be. So they might be able to go get more of a team-friendly deal than just say, like, going and getting Rasul Douglas right now as compared to somebody down in June as OTAs and mini camps are rolling around.
Yeah, Rasul's interesting because I feel like they know Rasul, they like Rasul. He's already won a Super Bowl, though, so he might be at the point in his career where it's like, go take the bag. Right. Like, whoever's giving you the most money, go take it. Because
that's a good point. I totally actually forgot.
Because you're setting yourself up. Like, he's not somebody who's chasing one. I feel like the guys who are chasing one would be like Joey Bosa is chasing one. Hey, I'm going to go to a team that I think gives me the best chance to win. Right. He's not, because he has one. So that's an interesting thing to play out. Is there any other positions, though, that you think they really need to address as we get into this point in the offseason?
I mean,
I still think they need a wide receiver.
A wide receiver for sure. And listen, I'm not going to be upset if Bean goes and finds a mid-round linebacker, right? Like
I get it because you're thinking about potentially a Milano replacement if he leaves. I understand that, but you just drafted Dorian Williams with a 3rd-round pick. Like, if he's not ready to go, like, that's concerning.
Oh, for sure, right? And you have Terrell Bernard back, but I'm also thinking, like, I think it's a luxury that the Bills have had that Dorian is becoming so suitable, and he's been that 3rd guy, and he's been able to fill in there too. Bernard has had some injury concerns. We saw that last year.
Yeah.
You don't know without seeing Dorian play on a more full-time basis how that's going to pan out for him. I'm always a big fan of see if you can find a little bit of insurance policy the way Dorian is when Milano and Bernard are healthy there too. So I'm not going to mind if they took a linebacker, but again, mid to like late to day 2 or even day 3 pick if we're being so honest.
So Sean Dolak is what you're talking about. You're talking about Sean Dolak.
If the shoe fits. The other that's a real conversation you could have too.
Yeah.
Isn't Sean Dolak just going to be Joe Andreessen? Like, isn't that just the same storyline, the same conversation? One of those two guys is arguably going to knock the other out of the roster.
Yeah,
so
well,
like,
let's see how it plays out first because there's 31
Sure.
other teams that could draft him.
Of course, but I'm just saying, like, in the
fully-
hypothetical, if
Yeah.
Sean Dolak does come to Buffalo, that's what I see playing out.
I fully anticipate that happening of sitting there with one of their bajillion 5th-round picks that they have of like, oh, Sean Dolak, University of Buffalo. All right, that is Dom Tibbetts back from Montana. I am Matt Beauvais back from Grand Island. Welcome to the 2nd week of free agency. Things have calmed down. Next up, a trip to the owners' meetings next weekend in Florida, where we should find a little bit more clarity about the Buffalo Bills and their 2025 outlook.